Welcome to this e-lecture, which is about measurement, validity, and reliability. And what we're going to talk about in this lecture is relating theoretical concepts to variables and indicators that are measured. So we're going to go from a theoretical concept to and discuss how we can make them measurable. What's important when we are going to measure theoretical concepts. So, first and foremost, two important features, which are validity and reliability. And validity is the extent to which a measure is well-founded and correspond accurately to the real world. So it's how adequate is this research study for answering the research question. It's really said in a different way. Are we really measuring what we want to measure? So are we really measuring what we want to measure? If we want to measure trust, are we really measuring trust, or are we measuring something totally different? If we're not measuring trust and we say we're measuring trust, well, then we have a problem. Or some other theoretical concept which we want to measure. Whereas reliability in statistics is the overall consistency of a measure. A measure is said to have high reliability if it produces similar results under consistent conditions. So it's the degree to which a research instrument produces stable and consistent results. With these measures, are we measuring the same theoretical concept, for example, trust, each time? Or are we measuring something different? Are we really measuring the same thing every time we use these measures? So that's consistency and a question about reliability, whereas validity is a question about if we are really measuring what we want to measure. Let's look at three questions about trust from the European Social Survey 2016. Generally speaking, would you say that most people can be trusted, or that you can't be too careful in dealing with people? Please tell me on a score of 0 to 10, where 0 means that you can't be too careful, and 10 means that you that most people can be trusted. And the second question being, do you think that most people would try to take advantage of you if they get the chance, or would they try to be fair? And the third question is, would you say that most of the time people try to be helpful, or that they are mostly looking out for themselves? And you answer on this 0 to 10 scale, where 0 is that you have no trust at all, and 10 means that you trust everyone. So, well, as for validity, it's a question: are these questions valid measures of trust? Are we able to measure the theoretical concept trust, or social phenomenon trust, really? Are we able to measure that using these questions? Whereas reliability is a question of, are we, if these questions measure trust, are we measuring trust across all individuals being asked these questions, or are we for someone measuring their day at the job, or something that happened to them during the day, or something else? Then there's a question about reliability. Are we measuring the same underlying concept for each individual? Do we get consistent results if the measures we use actually measure what we want to measure, which is a question about validity. So, measurement, reliability, and validity, how are these interconnected? Well, first and foremost, we have this theoretical concept, trust, and we select some variables we want to use, or questions we want to use to measure this theoretical concept, and these questions has to be operationalized, and in European Social Survey they are done so with a 0 to 10 scale, where 0 means you have no trust, 10 means you have a lot of trust. And of course we find these indicators in the data, and the data we use are European Social Survey 2016. Or we go out and gather this data. We use this indicator and we ask people according to this, we use these questions and these indicators to ask people, and we get the data. And the data we already have because we have European Social Survey 2016. So to take the three first ones here, but like you see that measurement validity is a question about relating this question or going from a theoretical concept and making this concept measurable. And if we are able to measure the theoretical concept and we are able to actually measure trust, then we have a high degree of measurement validity. And reliability is a question about when we use these indicators and go out and measure trust, are we really measuring the same thing all over the place and for all people? And if we are measuring different things for different people, our measures are not consistent, and we get it's unreliable. We're not measuring we're measuring different things for different people. And the reliability is a prerequisite for measurement validity, because if we're measuring different things, we are not measuring the same thing, of course, and that affects measurement validity. But reliability is not measurement validity is not a prerequisite for reliability. It's just reliability that's a prerequisite for validity. And let's get an illustration of that. In this first figure, we see that we have a measure that is not reliable or valid. We're all over the place. So we are measuring totally different things across individuals, and we're not measuring the same things, of course. So it's not reliable and it's not valid. Whereas in the figure in the middle, we have a reliable measure of something. We're not measuring what we want to measure, so it's not valid, but we're measuring something, and we're measuring it consistently. So we're measuring something with high reliability, but it's not valid because we're not measuring what we want to measure. And the last one is both reliable and valid because we're measuring the same thing. To illustrate this, I often use the example of a weight. Because if a weight, for example, you want to know how much you're weighing, and if the weight shows 2 kilos less than it should or 2 kilos more, it's not a valid measure of your weight, because it does this all over. It does this for every person. So you're not getting a valid measure of your weight, but it's reliable because it's consistently measuring 2 kilos too much or 2 kilos too little. So it's a reliable measure. It measures this. It's consistent, but it's consistently wrong in measuring your weight. Okay, so validity. It's all about, you have these measures or these indicators, and you have this theoretical concept. And these measures and indicators, they might measure something else than the theoretical concept, but they also measure the parts of the theoretical concept. So it's really, measurement validity is a question about how much of the theoretical concept are you actually measuring. I mean, you have to discuss this, and it's not really, there are no right or wrong, totally right or wrong answers to this. It's really about discussing, with these questions, are we able to measure what we want to measure? And we talk about phased validity and content validity. And phased validity is whether the measures we use to measure this theoretical concept seems plausible and seems relevant when first being faced with them. Whereas content validity is more about really discussing with experts in the field, going to the literature, and really be critical of, are these questions a good way of measuring what we want to measure. So let's but it's also important to know that that the measured value we have in the survey is really the result of the true value plus the measurement error. And when we talk about measurement error, we divide between random errors and systematic errors. And random errors are okay, but systematic errors, then we are really we do not want systematic errors. Random errors are, for example, memory. People don't remember right. Registration. They can. Some people, when they fill out a form, they tick off the wrong box, for example. And punching. When these results are registered by people punching them into the computer, so you get your data sets and so on, that something goes wrong there randomly. That influence reliability in the sense that you get random errors, which means that for some you're not measuring, you're not consistently measuring the same thing, but it's random, so it's not a big problem. You have these techniques for evaluating reliability. That is retest reliability. You use the same questions for example, two different points in time, and if nothing happens between those 2 points in time, you are measuring under the same conditions, you should get the same results, or you should be able to measure the same thing. And then you have inter-item reliability. We have a statistical measure called Cronbach's alpha. We can use to measure the inter-item reliability, and that is to see whether people are consistent when they are answering the questions. And in our case, it would be that, for example, if people say they are very trusting on one of these 3 questions that I've shown you, they should also say that on the other questions. And you have the general criticism of the sources. I mean, criticism, you evaluate whether these sources are reliable or not. Systematic errors, which is a real problem, is leading questions, which are no good. Social desirability, people answer what they find social desirable and not what they actually mean. You have the placebo effect, which is people think they have been affected by something, but they have not actually been affected. The Horton effect, which is kind of a researcher effect, that like people adjust their behavior because they know that they are being they are a subject for research. And of course, this means that you are not measuring this affects reliability in the sense that it's not, you're not consistent in what you measure, and they directly influence the measurement validity in the sense that you are not measuring what you want to measure. So, measurement validity. Face validity is the extent to which a measure or measures is subjectively viewed as covering the concept it's supposed to measure. In other words, a measure or measures can be said to have face validity if it looks like it's going to measure what it's supposed to measure. So we are measuring what we want to measure. This seems right. Okay, these are valid questions. Whereas content validity is different from face validity because it refers to the test to test what actually which refers not to what the test actually measures, but what it superficially appears to measure. I mean, the face validity is more a superficial view of what is measured, whereas content validity requires the use of recognized subject matters expert to evaluate whether the items used are actually assessing the defined content, and more rigorously statistical tests that does the assessment of face validity. So it's really, you use statistical tests to test whether okay, are people, for example, consistent in what they are answering. You say you have high, you are very trusting on this question. Are you also expressing high trust on the other questions that are supposed to measure trust? So yes, that was the end of this e-lecture. Thank you.